You know, chipping doesn't have to be that hard. In these next 3 videos, I'm going to share with you some of the real secrets to making chipping easy. People have told me time and time again this has helped them tremendously on their short game, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go and get started. A lot of times I find players that are really good full swing ball strikers, lots of lag, getting their body angled back away from the target, often struggle pitching because it's almost the exact opposite. Let's go over the difference between pitching like a tour player and swinging like a tour player. So the first one would be your spine angle. Now when I make a full swing, I need power. In order to do that, I need to be behind the golf ball. So when I look at tour players, their spine angle, so from their belt buckle to the top of their sternum, you can imagine if this was a skeleton, you just saw my skeleton, my spine would be tilted away from the target like that. Now that allows you to get a bunch of lag as you do that, and then release that club out in front and get that club to really accelerate very quickly through contact so you can hit the ball really far. I measured 50 major winners on the PGA Tour. The average tilt with a spine was 20 degrees away from the target when they hit their driver. That was at contact, they're 20 degrees tilted away. Now for pitching, it's very different. If you measure tour players there, you're going to see the spine angle is much more vertical. My weight is on my left. I almost feel like my nose is in front of the golf ball, which is way different than the full swing. You want to feel like your nose is behind the golf ball. And from there, I'm just going to kind of rotate back and through, staying more on top of the golf ball or left like this, not behind the golf ball like that. Now, this is important in chipping and pitching because it helps you to get your low point very consistent. And to be honest, if you didn't have to worry about hitting it very far, this would probably be the most consistent way to play golf. I just kind of bunt them down the fairway 50 or 60 yards at most, and I'd be a great player. This is a technique that you really use probably around 40 yards and in. But unfortunately with golf, you have to hit it far. It's really important. So you can't use the same technique for your pitching that you do for your full swing, or you're going to have some struggle. So again, I'm going to be vertical with my spine. My weight's going to be left. My nose feels like it's in front of the golf ball. And from there, I feel like I'm just going to toss a ball into this basket here. So I don't have the radar on. I just want to hit some of these short shots. And I'm going to feel like I rotate my body, and I was just going to toss that into the basket, just like that. I wouldn't ever toss the ball into the basket like this. I wouldn't throw it like that. That's very awkward. I'd want to rotate my body, get my right shoulder to come forward, and then toss it in that way. So you'll notice when I'm hitting these little pitch shots here, that's really all you're seeing me do. Very smooth, going ahead and letting the shoulder come around. It's almost hard to hit it this short. This is really technique that's going to be flying the ball maybe another 10 or 15 feet than this. So I could hit it over that basket too, would be completely fine. Anywhere from probably 15 yards all the way up to 40 yards. This is the technique that you're wanting to do with this. Now, from here, again, that little turn as I'm going back and through, let me go ahead and show you where I'd finish. So here I'm going to go ahead and hit one a little bit farther. You see that would be more like 25 yards. Now when I did that, my shoulders came out much more level. So if I'm hitting it toward the camera here, in a full swing, I would be very much like this. My shoulders stay tilted down. I have that lag from the inside. I release the club and my shoulders are tilted. In a pitch, my shoulders are going to be much more like this, much more level than they would be tilted down in the posture like that. My feet will also be closer together, which makes it easier for me to rotate on through there. So again, let me just take a nice little easy pitch shot here, and you'll notice how my shoulders come a little bit more level as I'm coming through versus full swing would be like that. So that's another really big one. Finally, the right arm. In the full swing, this is big. I want to have a lot of lag. I want that elbow tucked into my side, a big angle between my forearm, elbow, and upper arm. This is going to be bent. My club's going to be bent. Everything's really lagging in here as if I was going to take this club and fling it out in front of me. Now, when you're pitching, you don't really want to do that. You don't want to change this radius very much because that changes where your low point's going to be. I want to keep this elbow just slightly bent back and through and just let my body turn dictate the power. If I add some elbow bend in there, all of a sudden that club's really moving a long way and it's becoming more and more inconsistent. Full swing, that's great because you have speed, you have power. It's going to be as consistent as you can be. The most consistent in the players in the world do that because you have to do that to get power. But if we can eliminate that in these short game shots, I feel like this doesn't really bend very much, and I just use the rotation of my body to make that happen. Back and through. So you can see I'm going over the basket every single time. and I just go a little bit farther and farther. This one I'll hit even farther than that, but you'll notice my elbow doesn't bend very much as I'm doing that. There we go, and that one would have been another 30 yards or something like that.
I'm so excited to share with you this drill that's really helped my short game, and I hope it's a game changer for you too. If you want to be really good around the greens, you have to be able to control where this club is hitting the ground in relationship to the golf ball. If you're not able to do that, you're going to tend to hit chunks, thins, and blades. And I tell you what, there's nothing more frustrating than having an easy up and down for par and then blading it over the green into the bunker on the other side, and then ending up with double instead. I've seen that destroy many rounds. But when I see people really struggle with this, what's happening is they're typically locking up their knees and their hips, and they're doing everything with their arms too much. So they'll bring the club up, the trail arm will kind of go back behind them a little bit, they'll bend it a lot, and then the wrist will really hinge. And when you do that, you come down very, very steep and across the ball, and it just makes it so difficult to control where you're hitting the ground. If we want to be good at hitting the ground in the same spot every single time, we have to get everything moving back and through together. We have to unlock our legs and be able to swing back and through. And this drill is so good to help you do that. So first, let's talk about a couple quick setup tips here. So number one, I want to have my feet pretty close together, a club head or two apart. The reason for this is if I have my feet further apart, I'm going to tend to want to shift my weight to one side and then the other. Now that's great for generating power, but we're not trying to generate power here. We're trying to get good at controlling where we're hitting the ground in relationship to the golf ball. And if we have our feet closer together, it's much easier to stay centered and do that very well. So that's number one. Number two is we want to have our feet opened up a little bit. That makes it a lot easier to get the body working through. Imagine if I set up with my feet closed. If I do that, my hips are going to stall out. I'm going to hit a roadblock, and I'm going to tend to kind of flip the hands through. Again, that's going to make it really difficult to control where we're hitting the ground. Now, you can play around with it. I like to be roughly 20, 25 degrees, but play around with how open your stance is. I've seen players with their feet 45 degrees open before, so play around with that to find what works best for you. Lastly is our ball position. It's going to be roughly about in the middle of my stance. It may look like it's on my back foot, but that's just because my feet are really close together. If I lifted up my back foot, it's pretty close to my lead foot as well. So it's going to be roughly about in the middle of my stance. Now initially here, I want you to set up away from the golf ball. So I'm going to get in my setup here for this drill, and I'm just going to do some practice swings at first, but I'm going to take my lead hand and I'm going to put it above my trail shoulder. Now what this does is this is going to keep my trail arm from bending too much and going back behind me, and it's going to force me to unlock my body and get everything working through together. Now when you're holding your arm, you're just trying to keep it from going back behind you. You're not trying to push it into your body. It's just kind of hanging there and keeping you from moving it back behind you. So we're just going to set up here, and I just want you to go back and through. So unlock those legs, get those knees working, get those hips working, get that chest working back and through. And you're going to find that when you do this, it's so much easier to hit the ball or hit the ground in the same spot every single time. I'm looking at a little speck on the mat here, and I'm seeing that speck move every single time I swing through. So get a bunch of these in to get comfortable with this. And you can see when I'm doing this that my knees are moving around, my trail arm isn't bending very much, it's maybe bending a little bit, and my trail wrist is just hinging a little bit. So it may be something to get used to, but get used to this feeling of going back and forth. Now, once you get that right feeling, now we can step up and try to hit a ball here. So let's go ahead and get our normal setup. So again, feet close together, opened up, ball about in the middle of my stance, lead arm or lead hand on my trail elbow. I'm just gonna go back and through here. So that was a very, very good contact, medium trajectory shot. Now, once you get really good with this, then you can start controlling the trajectory there. So that was kind of my stock medium trajectory. Let's go over what I'm feeling there. So I'm taking that normal setup, but when I'm coming through, I'm feeling like this club, when it gets about belt level, is staying parallel with my hands. It's at the same level of my hands. And that's going to give me that stock medium trajectory kind of pitch shot. So let's do another one here where I'm getting that nice medium trajectory. So again, really, really good contact, medium trajectory kind of shot. Well, let's say I want to drive it in a little bit lower. I want to bring it in lower. Maybe I got some wind in my face. Maybe I want to land it in the middle and kind of run it all the way to the back. Well, if I'm trying to bring it in really low, I'm going to feel like when I release that club is staying below my hand. when I get to that point. So when my hands get up to about belt level, that club is still below my hand, and that's going to allow me to de-loft it as I'm coming through. And the other thing I may do is I may play it a little bit further back in my stance, more off my big toe. So let's go ahead and give that a try. More off my big toe here. And I'm going to feel like as I'm coming through that this club is staying below my hand as I'm coming through there. We're going to get a nice low trajectory. So you can see there, that was much lower trajectory, and I was able to keep that club below my hand there. Well, now let's say I want the high soft one. Well, the high soft one, I'm going to have that normal address position, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up the face about 10, 15 degrees. So I'm going to take that face and open it up just a little bit. And then when I'm going to feel on my release here, I'm going to feel like when my hand gets up to that belt level, that club is a little bit above my hand, and that's going to allow me to release the club a little bit more into the ball. So let's see if we can get a nice high soft one here. So again, normal address position. I've got the face a little bit open. Let's see if we can get a nice high soft one here. So you can see I got that one to go nice and high, club above the hands. That ball hit somewhere up a little bit, about 5 feet higher on the screen here. And that's what I'd be doing if I want to get that nice high soft one.
All right, pretty good one there. Let's see if that will spin. There we go, spun it back a little bit. That's one of the most fun shots in golf. You hit that shot that comes in there nice and low, checks up, you see it spin back on the green. How in the heck did the pros make it look so easy, and how can we do the same thing ourselves? I'm going to give you the real secrets to creating tons of backspin in this video. Now, first let's talk about the myth of shaft lean, or the myth of lack of shaft lean. A lot of times when people are saying, I want to hit a spin shot, there's two different ones that they're talking about. Now this one here is a 50-yard low launching spin shot. Now when I hit this one, a lot of people will say, well, I want to create a lot of loft, that way it gets backspin on it. So I'm going to go ahead and release the club shaft. I want the club shaft to be straight up and down. That is a complete myth. When you're 40, 50, 60, anything outside of 40 yards, you're creating quite a bit of shaft lean. Your hands are in front on these shots. And what we found through tons of people have had lots of research with the pro players using machines like this $18,000 GC quad that I have here, and it tells me exactly how much loft I have on it. What I found is that you want to have about mid-40s to slightly higher 40s loft when you're hitting these shots. Now this is a 60-degree wedge, so if you take this little trailer hitch marker here, and I put that on that club, that would be the direction my face is pointing when the shaft is straight up and down. Mid-40s means I'm going to take 15 degrees off of that. I'm going to have this shaft leaning forward, de-lofting that club quite a bit when I'm doing this. That allows me to get more consistent contact. You see, if you get too much loft on it, the ball is going to slide up the face. Imagine like a flop shot. So if I was going to hit a flop shot here with this face just straight up and down toward the sky, that ball would launch high, but it wouldn't have much spin. It's almost like a knuckleball. That's because the club is just sliding right underneath the ball, and it goes up in the air, but it doesn't have much backspin on it. If I want to get the backspin, I have to have my hands leaning in front a little bit. Now the second thing with the hands leaning in front is it gives you a lot more consistency. So here, I've got my 60-degree wedge. I'm going to have the hands quite in front, maybe 15 degrees, and we'll see how much spin we can get on it. Now anything over 7,000 RPMs on a 50-yard shot is pretty daggone good. So we'll see if we can get over that 7,000 RPMs. That one's going to be pretty good. Caught that one, nipped it pretty nice, just past the hole, and we saw that one checked up right away. Now 47 degrees of loft, that means I had 13 degrees of shaft lean right where we wanted to be. Maybe just a touch too thin on the face because I got 6,700 RPMs of backspin. So not bad. We can see that it checked up on the green, but we might be able to do a little bit better than that. Now the next thing that we want to do is we don't want to feel like we're slow through contact. This is an aggressive shot. I have to get the speed coming through the shot to get the spin on there. That's one of the reasons that I'm using this 60-degree wedge. If I use a 60, like a lot of the pros are doing, if I really accelerate, I'm going to have a lot of shaft lean naturally, and I'm going to get about the perfect amount of loft on there. Now if I use a 56-degree wedge or a pitching wedge even, I would start off with less loft, which would get me about the right amount of loft. But then if I went ahead and accelerated and got really aggressive and got my hands in front so I could be consistent, I would have too little loft in, sorry. So we start out with a 60. We're nice and aggressive through the shot. The second thing I want to think about I like to play this shot with a slightly open face until I get out around 60, 70 yards. So that face is just going to be turned open just a few degrees to help engage the bounce there. And that just helps me to keep from digging on this. Gives me a little more room for error. Now I'm going to set my feet a little bit forward. I want to have it, this would be square. I'm going to go ahead and put my feet slightly angled forward like this, especially my front foot. That really helps me to rotate through the shot better and to get a lot more action on it, get a lot of zip on it. You'll see a lot of pros set up like this on those 40, 50 yard shots. Again, as I go longer, I may set up a little bit more square. Let's try this one out. That one may be a touch short, but overall a pretty good shot. We see that one start to spin back a little bit. Again, 47 degrees loft, got the good number there. My backspin was 8,000 on that one, so I caught it just a hair better. That's about as high as I'm going to get on one of these shots. Now, there's a couple more myths on creating spin. You don't really create backspin by having that shot go high. When I see this shot 40, 50, 60 yards, I want that thing to launch really low. In fact, I'd like my launch angle to be under 30 degrees. That one was 27.6 degrees. That looks to your eye, you don't have to know all these numbers and know that, but that looks to most people's eye to be really low. The reason it's coming out low is because there's a lot of friction. So when I'm catching this ball, if I want to have a lot of spin, one of the reasons I have that shaft lean forward too, is that I want to catch this ball kind of low on the face. If I have the handle leaning straight up and down, that's actually going to pull this leading edge up off the turf. So when I have the shaft leaning back, now my leading edge is pulled up off the ground, and it's really easy to thin shots if you start doing that. As I lean the handle forward, now it starts to pull that leading edge closer to the turf, and I can hit it lower on the golf ball. So the key with spin is I can't have any debris, any water, any turf, anything get between my perfectly clean enough to eat off of it face of my wedge and a perfectly dry, clean golf ball. It has, both surfaces have to be really dry and clean to get that zip on there. If I hit it slightly lower on the face, that's going to help it to launch a little lower. It's also going to help to make sure nothing gets between the golf ball and the face. So I like to think just slightly low on the face, that's the best spot to hit it, maybe a millimeter lower than normal. If you're looking down and you see a little spot on your wedge where there's grass stuck to it, it's not going to spin. The stuff that's inside the grass, all that oily, grease, water, whatever's inside a blade of grass, causes it to slip up the face rather than really grab there. So again, this one I want to visualize it launching pretty low. That comes from me getting good friction on a nice clean strike low on the face. It also comes from me leaning that shaft forward. Let's go ahead and hit one more here. There we go, maybe a little out to the right. That's pretty good. And that one spun back a little bit too. So on there, that shot, 46 degrees loft, again, perfect. 7,500 RPMs of backspin, again, right where I want to be. Now, let's be honest, that leaves you with a problem. How do I know if I'm hitting it 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards? How do I know if I'm getting it to stop right at the correct distance? How do the pros seem to be able to hit it right on the number? Well, I like to use a system that I call a clock system, but there's a specific way you do this. It's not about necessarily where you stop your hands for each distance of shot, but it's also about a specific rhythm and a specific timing that you use. If you don't get that timing right, you're not going to be able to hit it right on your numbers. I've got an awesome video that's going to walk you right through this. I'll play a preview of it here in a second. All you need to do is go ahead and click the card that pops up on the screen. And if you don't see that card, don't worry, just go down to the description below, click the link there, and you'll also get instant access. I'm going to walk you through the timing, the rhythm, and the technique of that clock swing. That way we can hit these spinning shots, but we can get them to land right on the number that we want so we have some nice, really short putts. Let's go and get started. Well, I used to actually practice a lot in high school. This is one of my favorite things to do. I had a strip mowed down the back of my yard where I took the lawnmower. My parents probably hated this because I mowed it down to like half-inch turf in the back of the yard because we lived on a farm. And I would set buckets or towels along this, and I would try to set them at those distances that I knew. And maybe I knew my 56 degree went right at 65 yards. I'd set a bucket 65 yards away, and I would go ahead and do my 9 o'clock swing, and I would try to fly it right into the bucket. And I'd get to where I could tell for sure if I was going to be a couple yards short or a couple yards long, just because it gets so ingrained when you get the rhythm and the finish the same every time. We can use different length backswings to control the distance of our wedge shots. So for example, if we imagine that I'm a clock and 6 o'clock is directly down, my wedge would be at 6 o'clock, or my arms would be at 6 o'clock, I can go back to a 7:30 swing and I can have the same finish and hit at a certain distance, or I can go back to 9 or 10:30 and swing through to the same distance, and that's going to control, or the same finish point, and that's going to control the distance that my wedge shots are going to fly in the air. And I've got to keep that rhythm and that tempo very, very consistent. If I vary my tempos, I can hit at all kinds of different distances. So for example, I could have a real quick tempo 7:30 swing and probably hit this 90 yards. I could have a, maybe not really that far, probably 50 or 60 yards. I could have a very slow tempo 7:30 swing and hit half that distance. So I've got to get my distance the same. I've got to get my rhythm the same. That's the real key to it. And the second piece on there